All right, so here's what we got. We got a video called One Problem Every MMO Has Now, and Kel sent this to me before Christmas asking me to react to it, and I just never got around to it, so I apologize, Kel, but I was saving it for a rainy day, and this is the rainy day, because we're now doing something new. This is like the test run. I haven't done this before yet, but it's going to become a thing in February. Normally, what I would do, if you've been following YouTube for a while now, I do a lot of like news. I do like the news, Renfail thinks, or Renfail's thoughts, or Renfail reacts to. So those are three types of videos I do, which are usually around game trailers, gaming news articles, other content creators, things that people ask during live streams, and so on and so forth. And a lot of times I'll do those in a bubble. I'll just be like, oh, here's a YouTube comment that someone asked. Let me go take 15 minutes to record a video of that and then upload it and get an answer out. And like I said, I usually just do that in a bubble. But recently I had a lot of fun doing it live, and it got me thinking about in terms of growing Twitch more now that we have an active goal in mind of getting to 5,000 followers by the end of the year. I'm very satisfied with where YouTube is going, so we're good to go there in terms of multi-streaming all the game stuff. But it doesn't have the same categories, so we're going to be experimenting with this and doing stuff like this. Maybe not every day, but at least a few times a week, where we're going to be hanging out in the afternoon, sometimes the morning, and we're going to cover videos like this and news articles. So this is a video called One Problem Every MMO Has Right Now. Um, and I think it has to do with community, if I remember correctly. I remember watching a bit of this before Christmas, and then I shelved it because I was like, I want to talk about this at a later point in time. So that's what we're gonna be doing today. We're gonna start off with this, probably do some news articles and stuff, but in the meantime, let's watch this and see what Redbeard Flynn has to say.
MMOs have a problem, and it might be key to understanding why for many players they don't feel as connected to MMOs as they once did.
I should stop right there and say I'm not one of those people. I feel connected. I feel more connected now than I ever have to MMOs. But I'm also not in the jaded neckbeard camp. Um, there are a subset of MMORPG players who grew up on like EverQuest, EverQuest One, EverQuest 2, World of Warcraft Classic, Anarchy Online, Star Wars Galaxies, and they maintain this hardcore stance that it's just not good unless it's forced grouping and death runs and corpse runs and loot loss and full PvP. Ram, old school. And I'm much more give me cutscenes, give me modern cutscenes, modern voice acting, give me cinematic storytelling, give me fast travel, give me um, modern conveniences, quality of life features. The looking for dungeon system in World of Warcraft, the matchmaking system works amazing. I love the follower dungeons. I love it in Star Wars: Old Republic. They do the exact same thing there. I like my modern features, so I'm not necessarily one of those people who feels like I have less of a connection now. I have more of a connection now with MMOs than I've ever had before, and I'm 25 years into playing games and also as a career.
It also might be a problem that MMOs are no longer capable of solving, because it's already been solved elsewhere. You see, this problem is something I didn't fully realize existed until I was watching one of my favorite British YouTubers who is occasionally mistaken for Henry Cavill
Josh Strife.
talk about one of my favorite games of all time. This man, Josh Drive Hayes, may have just ruined MMORPGs for me. And he did it with a tiny comment in an hour-long video that he spent over 100 hours making for a game called EverQuest. My all-time favorite MMO, and one that was formative to me not just as a kid, but
I also loved EverQuest 1. I'm switching a tab over and it's going to do a weird thing here, so give me just a second. I also loved EverQuest and played the hell out of it when I was growing up as a late teenager into my adulthood. Um, but man, I just think that I made a discussion about EverQuest the other day about how I much prefer the newer games recently. Let me get this over. I wanted to make sure that I had that moved out of the way. I think we're good now.
also as a content
All right, stop it.
creator. But the ruthless murder of my favorite genre doesn't just stop there. It doesn't just stop at classic MMOs even. It actually expands out to the entirety of the genre.
Did he
Modern
just say?
MMOs aren't safe from this necrotic scourge.
Hang on, come
Of
on.
even. It actually expands out. Ruthless murder of my favorite genre doesn't just
Murder
stop
of my
there.
favorite
It doesn't
genre.
just stop at classic MMOs,
Okay.
even. It actually expands out to the entirety of the genre. Modern MMOs aren't safe from this necrotic scourge. In fact, they may actually be more susceptible. The problem can be summed up in this clip.
I make it to the field of bone and I keep grinding, and honestly, I'm just lonely. The nostalgia people have for MMOs where you need a team often skip over the parts where your team isn't online and you can't do anything.
Josh Drive Hayes was lonely in EverQuest. EverQuest is one of the most important MMOs in the history of the genre.
I would argue that it was just the first, not necessarily the most important. Being the first, it definitely set the tone for what was to come next. But it's kind of like, I don't know, I guess the way you could look at this in my mind is like, for a long time, we had only gasoline cars, and now we have um, diesel. Then you have diesel vehicles, and then you have hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles. We have hydrogen vehicles. We have vehicles that run on vegetable oil. We have vehicles that run on whatever. For a very long time, the combustible engine automobile was the only automobile. So was it important? Sure, it was important in the sense that it was the first one, but was it the most important one? I don't think we can make that judgment call yet because we haven't finished evolving the automobile. But we now have many different versions of them, each one that you could call superior to the last. Berserker says, "I'd say WoW is the most important." I would say that yes, WoW is definitely probably the pinnacle of the old school MMORPG um, market, and it's 20 years old and still maintains one of the largest, um, communities, largest populations of any live service game. I know there was a brief period of time a few years ago when Final Fantasy XIV was winding down to the end of their last expansion, and they briefly surpassed World of Warcraft for total number of subscriptions, but it was a very brief period of just a few months, and then World of Warcraft dominated again. So even after all of these years, as important as EverQuest was, and I don't want to take that away from EverQuest, I don't think it was the most important by far. I think World of Warcraft beats it by a long, long mile.
It's also the one that even today is referred to by players as being socially driven.
That is So I'm going to agree to disagree on this. Socially driven would not be the word that I would use for EverQuest. I would use forced grouping, um, group dependent, um, group mandatory. Um, that doesn't necessarily mean social because here's the thing: almost everyone I know says, fuck people, I'm going to box. I'm just as guilty of this. I will almost always, and I haven't played EverQuest or EverQuest 2 in a few years now, but you can go back on my channel and check all the playlists of me playing EverQuest and EverQuest 2 over the years. P99. P99 was the only place I didn't do it because they won't let you, but I 2 box and occasionally 3 box. I know Kel 5 boxes and 6 boxes, especially his last year of EverQuest on the most recent progression server that we were playing on. Most people box these days, so I don't think you can consider EverQuest a social MMO in that sense because they never provided players with tools to be social. They never made a matchmaking system that worked. Whereas if I play Star Wars: The Republic or I play World of Warcraft, I immediately have people at my fingertips through the looking for dungeon or matchmaking systems in those games. That's social. I'm instantly ported with other people, and I'm there and I'm grouping with other people immediately. Calcron says he used to multi-box EVE Online with 8 clients. I mean, at one point I did a 6-man team way back in the day with EverQuest 1, but I mean it was before EverQuest 2 even launched, probably around Planes of Power expansion when I was done with everything else and was just playing that. So it's interesting to hear someone. I wouldn't call it a socially driven MMO. I would call it forced grouping. And no one really has grouped together for years and years and years because most people prefer to box so that they don't have to deal with toxic assholes.
It's the game I personally created a video on detailing how, as a child, it taught me to socialize as I suffered through tremendous social anxiety growing up.
I will say this, the old school EverQuest did have a social component to it before we got into, social media and Discord and everything else because you were required to type in voice chat to communicate with other people to find groups. And we had to go to forums. And I remember being one of the early adopters of the forums and saying, I'm not afraid to put my face. So I would upload my picture. There would always be a forum post somewhere on these old forums from 25 years ago. And they'd be like, "This is who I am in real life," and you'd share a picture of yourself and say, "Hey, I play Renfail in game. My name's Tim. Pleased to meet you." And that was something that we used to do, and that aspect of it was cool. Um, but that's also 25 years ago. Like the technology has come so far these days that people just don't play that way. Thanks for the subscription on Prime, Eniong. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support. So yeah, that's a weird. I would say that yes, maybe yesterday, yesteryear, I should say that EverQuest was like that, but not in a long time.
In my deepest held memories of the game, it was the game itself that gave me the tools I needed to essentially not be lonely anymore. But here we are, 50 to 60 hours into EverQuest, and Josh was lonely. It is here that I
Modern EverQuest. We need to make the distinction. Josh Drive has said he was lonely in modern EverQuest because again, it's a 25-year-old game. It used to require socialization. It no longer requires socialization. So that's I think the distinction needs to be made that we're talking modern EverQuest and not old EverQuest.
really just want to rush out and defend EverQuest. I want to point out that it is a game that it still requires a lot from you. It requires so much, and Josh's experience of the game, even with as much time as he put into it, isn't like a full encapsulation of the MMO. After
I gotta say one thing here, though. I don't think it requires that much of a time commitment these days because you have mercenaries and everything else that make it a very much a solo single player experience. I've talked about EverQuest retail and EverQuest 2 retail. It's just like World of Warcraft, Lord of the Rings Online, Star Wars: The New Republic. Those games have evolved to be single player RPGs now with some group based components. So yeah, I don't think it demands anything. It's just as long as you're willing to put in the time there is 20 years of 25 years of content or whatever that you can go through, but you could do it all single player these days with a mercenary. um Lerthamir says that's the big difference between the OG game and the classic versions coming out now. The social component everyone enjoyed from the past is in no insignificant part replaced by social media. Yes, social media has replaced the way we used to only socialize in game. So this is when anytime I hear somebody complaining about how MMOs aren't social anymore, I always cry bullshit. They are just as social as they've ever been. It's just that we socialize in a modern way. We no longer use ancient, you know, scrawls carved on the walls of the forums with chalk rock. You know what I mean? Like we use voice chat and we use Discord servers and we use Discord communities and we use, you know, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Twitch. Like that's how we socialize these days. Like a good example of this is our World of Warcraft guild doesn't have a forum. And we only like we require players if you want to join our guild on Moonguard, which recruitment is steady. You can see it every time we play. Like we're getting people every week. It's been great. But to even sign up for our guild, you have to join Discord and you have to have voice chat and you have to fill out an application on our Discord server. We don't have a website, we don't have a forum, we do it all through Discord. Our community is on Discord. So it's like it no longer exists in the game. We don't type in game. Like we talk in Discord. We have chat channels in Discord set up for people who want to type, but all of the dungeons, all of the grouping, all of the raids, that is all 100% voice. Um, and it's I mean, watch our videos from like Wednesday nights when I do my dungeons, the Saturday night raids we do, the Saturday morning streams. It is extremely social if you want it to be. If you're an antisocial person, then or you refuse to modernize and you refuse to join a Discord community, or you refuse to be on social media and all these other things, then that's a you problem, not a me problem. If you're having an issue finding people in a game, and speaking you as in plural, not anybody individually, so no one feels triggered, please.
All, no player's experience, no single player's experience, content creator or otherwise, can ever fully encapsulate any MMO or any game, anything. I could even point out to the fact that there is a very real issue with old MMOs having this basically a gigantic content gap with new players and those that have been playing the games for 10 or 15 or 20 years. I could point all that stuff out and try and assuage this growing panic I was feeling. But just pointing to a top-heavy player base, it's not enough. The issue of needing to bring your friends in older MMOs is well established, whether it's EverQuest, World of Warcraft, Lord of the Rings Online, or any number of other MMOs that offer the sort of older school reliance or preference on having other players with you. It's something I've experienced as well. I felt it very keenly in Lord of the Rings Online when I tried that MMO for the very first time just a year ago. I found enjoyment amongst the deliberately crafted hills. I gazed in awe at locations I'd seen in my favorite trilogy or read in my favorite books. I marveled at the sound design and how it would change and alter as you shifted from one scene to the next. But I did it all with no one to turn to.
And I would argue that that's a you problem, not a me problem, because you choose, literally, you choose to play that game as a single player RPG, or you can choose to play it with other people. Anybody who's been around my YouTube channel for any length of time I've been playing Lord of the Rings Online as a good example for the past, I've played it since it launched, same as Star Wars: Old Republic. And we have gone into Lord of the Rings Online with our community, I think 3 or 4 times now. We've gone in for like 3 months at a time, and we play with 30, 40 other people. Sometimes it's a group as small as 15 to 20, but it usually starts off about 40 to 50 people, and then it might diminish to like 15 to 20 by the time we get done. My brother and I have played together for many, many years, and apart from that, I have played solo a lot of the times as well. But the times I play solo is because I'm choosing to play solo, because the game is designed in the modern era. The modern version of Lord of the Rings Online is designed as a single player RPG with optional group-based components. If you want to go around and have people to group with, then that's on you as the player to find other people to group with. It's not the game's fault. It's not the industry's fault. It's a you problem. You have chosen to not find a guild. You have chosen not to go out on forums. You chose not to go on Discord. You choose not to go on Reddit. You choose not to find a good group of people to play with. Because if you want to play with other people, you 100% can. So I feel like this is like a Redbeard Flynn problem, not a game problem, because he's choosing to play Lord of the Rings Online solo. I have chosen to play Lord of the Rings Online with friends and family. So you choose the experience you want. Belf says, most of my time in WoW 2009 Burning Crusade back in the day was socializing, as my PC wasn't good enough to even raid or do dungeons. The game was a big social environment. It was back in the day, and it still can be. I would look at our guild as a perfect example of something that is a big social environment, but we just do it in a different way. By the way, guys, I don't have any chat on screen right now, and I apologize for that. Streamlabs is not showing the Twitch chat on my screen, and I gotta fix that. So I don't know what happened. We'll figure it out next time I do one of these. This is the first time I've done it just chatting like this, and I was running Streamlabs with YouTube and Twitch at the same time. And when I shut the YouTube stream down, it didn't carry the chat over. And I think it's because I'm primarily logged into Streamlabs with my YouTube, so it freaked the client out. So I am reading the comments directly on Twitch, but they're not showing up on screen for some reason. Lift Me said, I'd be interested to see if now that Microsoft owns Blizzard and Discord, if they could somehow integrate Discord functionality right into the game. I think the first MMO to integrate a popular social medium right into the client will pop off as more naturally social MMO. Well, you can overlay, at least for voiceovers. I don't know about the about the chat channels.
In fact, some of the most social moments of that experience were the shared moments I had with my Twitch chat. Or later when I...
Hang on. So he was saying he had great moments with his Twitch chat, right? Well, what's the problem with that? Why can't you convince your Twitch chat to come join you? Like if your Twitch chat is watching you, like why aren't you saying, "Hey guys, let's form a guild in Lord of the Rings Online and let's go play together." By the way, this is exactly what I've done over the years with my brother. We literally in our Discord, it's like, "Hey guys, my brother and I are thinking about playing World of Warcraft for the next 3 months. Anybody want to come join us? We're gonna play Star Wars: The Republic. Anybody want to come join us? Hey guys, we're gonna go play Lord of the Rings Online. Anybody want to come join us?" Literally, the whole formation of the World of Warcraft guild we have going on right now was me saying at the end of BlizzCon 2023, saying, "Hey guys, I'm gonna go play World of Warcraft for the next few years. And a bunch of people went, "Oh, do you want to form a guild?" And I went, "Yeah, why not? I've done it before in the past. I have no problems doing it again as long as there's other people to help out." But like, if you're interacting with your Twitch community and they're interested in you playing the game, then form a guild. Like, just make a group, make it happen. Like the onus is on you. It's kind of like, if you build it, they will come. Like if you build a guild and you build a group, people will come and play with you.
Somehow convince friends to join me. Lord of the Rings Online was lonely. It felt
That's
like I was playing a single player RPG,
that's because
but
that's what it
not
is.
necessarily
That
a
is.
very
That's
good one. One where the world was too big, where it was too static.
That's because it was designed differently. It was designed 20 years ago. So there are points in his argument, but I would also argue that I think the points he's trying to make aren't valid because he's trying to point at a game that is the modern version of something that was built 15, 20 years ago. EverQuest, Lord of the Rings Online, they haven't modernized in the same way that like EVE Online and World of Warcraft have. Those games have modernized their clients and features to offer quality of life that makes their games feel modern, despite the fact that they're built on 20-year technology. Lord of the Rings Online has not. EverQuest has not. Those games are very much still stuck in the past, for better or for worse. And I love and will defend Lord of the Rings Online until the day it goes offline because it's like my favorite MMORPG of all time. But it has its flaws. One of which is just it's old school. Bethel says you're right. Proof is right there with WoW Classic popularity. Blizz created a space and people jumped in again. Yeah, and it's on you. It's on the people.
But that isn't the fault of Lord of the Rings Online alone. It was far from the only game to elicit those kind of feelings in me. I reviewed other MMOs on this channel. EverQuest and its sequel, EverQuest 2, were both lonely in their own ways. Ultima Online Outlands, despite players grinding skills on the newbie island right beside me or hawking their wares ad nauseum, it was unerringly lonely.
I'm sorry. I may be nitpicking poor Redbeard, poor Flynn. I may be nitpicking him too much, but I just feel like everything he's complaining about is because he wasn't proactive in finding people to play with. Like anybody who's been in my Discord, I recommend this all the time. I was like, if you want to find people, what do? The first thing, you go to the forums. If you can't find people on the forums, you go to Reddit. I have never, even before the days when I was playing different things, like you go to a forum and you say, "Hey guys, I play at 6 p.m. this time. Is anybody out there recruiting, or does anybody want to join me?" You will always find people. And if you're a streamer, because Redbeard has a decent YouTube channel, he's got a pretty decent Twitch following. I absolutely have streamer privilege. I am not a big streamer. I've got like 25,000 followers on YouTube, maybe like 400 on Twitch. I get like 20, 30 people tuning into my live streams. I am not a big person by any means. And I absolutely 100, I don't ever solo if I don't want to. But I often do solo because I'm doing first impressions videos and guides and content creation. What's up, Pimbar? Ultima mentioned, yeah. Um, but Wednesday nights, it's like it's on. Like Wednesday nights is group night. Wednesday nights is when I log in and I'm ready to play with my guild and we do group and we do dungeons. Saturday mornings we do dungeons. Saturday mornings we do the Tauren group. Saturday nights we do raids. The nights of the week that I want to do groups, I have people to group with. And the other days of the week that I'm playing and I'm streaming by myself because I'm hanging out with my stream and my YouTube and Twitch community, like those are different days and those are different experiences, but I do not agree at all that games are lonely.
It wasn't that there weren't people playing, it's just that they were doing other things.
Yeah.
They were in other places or absorbed in their own world.
Yes.
A world we shared, but one that seemed to exist in tiny little bubbles. Playing an MMO in 2023 is a lot like going anywhere in public and looking up to see everyone absorbed in their phones.
Berserker said Lotro is good, but the delay on pressing buttons. Hang on, I gotta expand this so I can actually read that chat. Dun, 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 dun. Was the biggest problem because it just felt weird. Gotcha.
The MMO equivalence is players absorbed in their own tasks. Or in some games like WoW and EverQuest that still require some social activity for their biggest activities, absorbed in their own friend groups.
Yep. Yep.
Bubbles.
Guilds.
Just hundreds of thousands of bubbles.
Guilds,
Of
man.
varying sizes, all floating around in the same room.
Yep.
But with a barrier that's difficult to penetrate
No, it's
without
not.
concentrated effort.
It's not difficult. You just have to be social.
But surely this isn't the case for newer games, right? Newer games that have huge populations that fill up the entire game space and even add queues when you're trying to log in. No, they are lonely as fuck.
No, they're not.
Have you ever had the feeling of being in a crowded place but having no one to talk to? A party you didn't...
Himbar just said, I only play with my brothers these days. Yes, I only play with my brother. You know, for the games like right now, I only play Sea of Thieves with my brother. I only play Minecraft with my brother and my nephew. Sea of Thieves with my brother and my sister-in-law. Those are games I only play with them. Other games like World of Warcraft, I'm playing with our community. But I enjoy playing with my brother a lot. He just got his Xbox Series X a few months ago, and we've already planned out like a whole bunch of stuff we're doing. Like we're literally looking into the next co-op game we're going to be doing with my sister-in-law with his wife, because we're having fun doing that on Sunday night. So we're finishing up Sea of Thieves, Legend of Monkey Island, and now we're looking at like Grounded, Pal World, you know, Enshrouded. Like what are we going to play next? Berserker says, hey guys, you got a spot for a new guy? It's that simple. It is that simple. Like you literally just type in OC, hey guys, anybody got room for somebody to join their group? And you find a group. Go post it on Reddit. Go post it in the forums. It's that easy. You'll find a group. Himbar says, even though I play with my brother, when needed, I can still get people. On Lotra, for example, we need a higher level tune and we got someone to our zone in 5 minutes. That's the thing. If you are proactive, people will show up. But you got to be proactive. You can't be whiny about
want
things.
to be in it, perhaps, or hell, going to the grocery store and realizing literally everyone is moving their carts at like maybe half speed and they seem to be multiplying around every damn aisle. That's the feeling I often got in newer MMOs. It perhaps didn't feel quite as keen without the wide open empty spaces, but the bite of loneliness was there when I spent 30 hours in Elder Scrolls Online, or 150 hours in New World. Yes, I have played over 150 hours in New World.
It's a good
or
game.
100 hours in Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Dude,
It was
Star Wars:
there
Republic.
when
I have
grinded through the
1,000
main
hours of Star
story
Wars: The
quest in
Republic.
Final Fantasy XIV with only a few pockets of social interaction when I jumped in a dungeon finder. Being given lists of tasks to do gave me the progression so many of us seek in MMOs, a key tenet of them. But the social component? Entirely lacking. MMOs for quite some time now have felt this way.
Berserker says Star Wars: The Old Republic is the GOAT. Hell yeah, it is. Bethel says there's also an overwhelming amount of MMOs now compared to back in the day when there was only a handful. Correct. We're in the golden age of gaming where we have thousands of games that get released every year. It's an amazing time to be alive for sure.
And I don't think it's going to change.
No, it's not going to change.
No matter how many MMOs come out with these ideas of creating social situations, and I don't necessarily think it's their fault.
No, it's your fault. It's literally your fault because it's the player choosing to be lazy about not getting groups. Some people are introverts and they don't feel comfortable looking for group or they don't feel comfortable putting together a group. There absolutely is that aspect of socialization happening for some people. And that can be challenging to overcome, but that still comes back to it's a you problem, not a me problem. Like you don't have to chat with people if you don't want to, because these games are built so that you can play as a single player RPG if you have social anxiety. And then if you want to get involved with groups, then you can. There's dungeons, there's guilds, there's lots of ways to interact with people. So it's, again, I still feel like this is a, you problem in terms of the person as opposed to a game problem. Lurthimer says, over the past week, I've joined 4 different discords of different guilds just by running Mythics Plus and noticing they all had the same guild tag and asked if they had a voice chat Discord. Bingo. Bevel says, I've seen groups for antisocial, no typing, low comms on Reddit for most MMOs. Correct. You can totally find those types of guilds too.
Because after all I have to really do is go back to the time when the last time that I really got enmeshed in an MMO. Back when I was playing EverQuest in a raiding guild, raiding 2 to 3 times a night, keeping up with progression in a guild where we were able to field raids of up to 70 people quite regularly, and had a lot of people engaged in chat all the time. Surely that time, from roughly 2016 to 2020, that was a time when I didn't feel lonely in the MMO at all, because there were so many people to play with in a game that actually made it important to play with those people. Surely I
That still exists. I'm sorry. Oh, now I know why Kel wanted me to watch this video because he knew I was gonna get triggered. I love you, Kel. Fuck you, Kel. Um, now I know. Now I know. I totally know why he wanted me to watch this now. Um, so the last time we did, when World of Warcraft Lich King came out, we had I think around 150 people that joined us for Wrath Lich King Classic. Like 150 people was what we started off with, and it did go down over a few months because people burn off, the nostalgia wears off, so on and so forth. But we had a ton of people that start. All we did was like, hey guys, we're gonna be doing this. It was my brother's idea. He's like, dude, I really want to play. Do you think you have time? And I was like, I will totally do this with you, man. And so we did it. And even for what we're doing with retail, it's about half that size. I think we're probably I haven't ever done a head count to be honest with you, but I'd bet we have 75, 80 mains, and raid nights we get 50, we're getting 12 to 15 people on raid nights. But you don't need 70 people to do raids anymore, and you haven't needed 70 people to do raids in like 15 years. EverQuest 2 only had a max of 24. World of Warcraft had a max of 40. Like no one has raided with 70-man raid teams since like Planes of Power for EverQuest, with the exception of like progression servers, because people still do that. And that's the thing. If you want to do that, you could still do it. Just ask Kel, who prompted me to watch this video. He was in one of the big progression raid guilds on was it Yellowknack, the most recent EverQuest? Because we started off, we were all in the same guild, then I was done and moved on, and he stayed playing with another group. And they went off and were raiding all through the content that he had never seen before, and they had 70, I think around 70 people. I don't know if they had 70 people every night. I think it was like between 40 and 70. But if you want that giant social dynamic, join a fucking guild. Like it's that simple. Like I'm not understanding the complaint here at all.
didn't feel lonely there, right? Except I did. How though? How could I feel lonely when I was constantly getting all these pings from Discord? Except that's part of it. I was being pinged in Discord, not getting tells in the MMO. You see, this is where the crux of the issue, or the solution, comes in. EverQuest, which was once known as the prettiest chat room, was now the ugliest phone call in an age of text messaging. You didn't organize in EverQuest to do something social. You didn't log in and find your friends to do things with. You messaged them off of the game, in Discord, asked them if they wanted to log in. You set up reminders or alerts for raid days. You gathered everyone up in voice channels to make communication easier when you were in that raid. Yes, there are of course outliers to this, but generally, that's how it worked.
Do you want to know what else didn't exist in the golden age that he's referring to 25 years ago? We didn't have Netflix, Hulu, HBO Plus, Paramount Plus, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. Okay, let me keep naming things. Kindles, Kindle readers. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't have GPS. We didn't have Google Maps. We didn't. Okay, you know what I mean? You see what I'm talking about here? We didn't have all of these other things that we were involved in. And Hembar says we also didn't have that many responsibilities back then. This is also true. But I think the big thing for me is the distractions sort of thing. It's like, if you want to call it a distraction, my interests are spread between 500 different things. Back in the day, we only knew about one thing, and that was EverQuest. And then it was like, oh, wait, now we have Star Wars Galaxies. Oh my God, now there's two. And oh, now there's Anarchy Online. Now there's three. Now there's Camelot what's it called? Camelot, Dark Age of Camelot. Now there's another one. Like in the beginning, when there was only 6 games that you could play, it there were more people naturally communicating in one single space because there was only a few things. Now there are 1,000 games, which we talked about earlier in this stream. There's 1,000 games to play, and 1,000 other things that we all do as adults. We all have Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus. We have some type of streaming subscription. We're watching TV, we're reading books, we're socializing on social media with our friends and family, we're watching Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. We're doing all of these things. So this golden era that he's referring to, you have to consider the generational shift that has happened, where we're not just in one place. What's up, Bamboozler? Um, Berserker says, I don't know. If he's going to say modern advancements made MMOs feel lonely, I can't get behind that. A strange point. I can't get behind it either because that's really what he's been driving at here so far. I would also note that, this is one of the reasons why I'm not behind like because he's one of the people who supports the Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen stuff. And I'm not behind that idea. Like this idea of forced grouping, corpse runs, death penalties, XP loss, you lose all your loot when you die, you have to make a naked corpse run. Like, they don't like group finders. They don't like any of the matchmaking and all this other stuff. Like I'm not in the same boat with those people, which is why I think I'm having such a negative reaction to this video because it's like all the things he's complaining about are literally just him, not the fault of the game.
You organized away from the game itself
And
because it worked better. But I do have to pause here to single out one thing that is not a solution to this. Everyone who's trying to every MMO out there that keeps trying to put voice in MMOs, like a voice channel specifically for that MMO, just stop. Just stop doing that. That is not the key.
sure it is.
Unless you're creating, like, the only time I can think voice in a game is worthwhile is when you are using it as a proximity. That shit works really well and it adds atmospheric things. But if you but just like this, basically like slapping on a very crappy version of Discord, basically making Ventrilo or TeamSpeak come back into the MMO, just it's a waste of your time and ours. Please stop. So it was here with this
I
realization, this
It is what it is. I
understanding of
like
how
voice
the
chat.
most social MMOs I
Berserker says punishing death is the worst mechanic. The failure of dying is already punishment. Exactly. It's my loss of time. If I'm losing time, I'm already being punished. And so it's like I don't need extra punishment on top of that.
ever played had completely changed in how I interacted with them after playing the games for years, on and off for 20 years. That, coupled with the already present understanding that the current generation of MMOs lean very heavily into task oriented solo or proximity play rather than deeper social connection, I really began to
So I have to disagree here because right, Bam. This is what I would consider in the your this he's in the neckbeard category, that's fine. It's not meant as an insult, but the neckbeard category is like the old school EverQuest 1 crowd who think that the old school way is the only way. And it's like they only make up these days about 25 to 50,000 players in total. It's not millions. They will claim that it's millions, and I can tell you as a game developer and as the head of two different game studios, it is not hundreds of thousands, it is not millions. It is 25 to 50,000 players who enjoy the hardcore old school these kind of mechanics. It is like 0.2% of all gaming communities. Bam. So it's not true. There was another point I was going to make. Hey, let me back up here real quick.
understand heavily into task oriented solo or proximity play rather than deeper social connection.
So he's saying that games these days only focus on like solo play. The majority of the game, and I would argue that that's amazing because it gets more people to play your game. But you can still have the deep social connections if you want. I will point to the raids that we are doing on Saturday nights with our World of Warcraft guild as the perfect example. Like, and Wednesday night dungeon runs and the Saturday morning dungeon runs that we do after the Torin group. Like, it can be as group oriented as you want it to be. You just have to make the time to make it happen. Like, it's again, it can be whatever you want it to be.
really began to understand and realize something. It's not just that MMOs aren't social anymore, that the tools that they used in the past have actually just kind of been replaced and are not really needed as much anymore.
On that we can
That
agree.
they are kind of in a lot of ways something from a bygone era.
Yeah, typing in chat is a bygone era. Being forced to group with other people and being forced to sit in a chat room while you wait for other people to find a group for 45 minutes. That shit is from yesteryear. I don't want that. I don't sail across this ocean in a wooden vessel to get to London. I take a plane and I fly there in 2 hours. Why would I want to spend 4 months at sea with lice and scurvy and the weather when I can fly there in 6 hours? Like, it's modern gaming. Like,
A way of communicating online that is become archaic. Again, like a fucking phone call. Please don't call people. It's awful. Just text them.
yes,
But it's
please
with
text only.
the idea that all these tools are so completely outdated and things like Discord have so completely replaced them that I realize like it's not just that they aren't social. MMOs are actually they might be antisocial. And I'm not just talking about things like modern MMOs, all MMOs. Now stick with me here because I need to explain this before you eviscerate me in the comment section. At least just give me the opportunity to make my case.
Lurthmer says, hang on, Berserker says, you don't get it, Ren. 4 months at sea makes for a way better social experience. It totally does, man. We can have rats biting at our ankles and we can all get scurvy together. Um, and then we'll mutiny. Lurthmer says, I do think the number of people who would label themselves hardcore or old school probably number in the hundreds of thousands or low millions, but their views differ so much as what constitutes old school that they might as well be entirely different games. Um, I can tell you from the data that I've seen, it's definitely not millions. If you look at the total of smaller communities that play games, it might be hundreds of thousands. If you look at it that way, because you can say that, Lord of the Rings Online has 35 to 50,000 players. EverQuest 1 has 35 to 50,000 players. EverQuest 2 has about 25 to 30,000 players. Ultima Online has 25, 30,000 players. If you calculate all of those up together, you might get a quarter million. Um, 250, 300,000 players, but they're not. That's the thing. Their voices differ so much in what they consider to be the holy grail of old school that they can't ever agree on anything. That's why there's only ever 1,200 to 1,500 people playing like P99 at any given time, because people actually don't want that. It's a very small subset of the community that want that type of a game. Most people want to be playing something that's rewarding them for them. Maduros has a really good commentary on this that he's mentioned before when we've been playing, which is players don't want to be punished for playing games. Um, players need to, it's just that if the game starts disrespecting their time, players will leave. So it's a fun factor. And most players, and I mean most, not the neckbeard crowd, but most players want to have enjoyment. They want the dopamine. They want to feel enjoy. They don't want to bang their head against a brick wall. They don't want to spend 45 minutes looking for a group. They don't want to have a corpse farm where they go back for all these things. They just want to have it, play. Hembar says Jesus just needs to make an MMO so it can be resolved.
And then you can tear me apart. MMOs are, by design, journeys. They're an adventure through persistent worlds where everyone is at different stages along the predetermined path. And the design of the MMO means you have to create friction along the journey to make players want to keep going down that path. Players need to feel like they have earned something over the player who started yesterday if they started 10 years ago. This is a recurring problem you see in some newer MMOs where players often feel like their achievements are cheapened. Or even in the wildly divisive choice to level squish in World of Warcraft, which raised the hackles of many players fearing they now were in some way lesser because their achievement, the journey had shrunk. The path between where they were and where someone new was starting, it shrunk. Something that was done, in a sense, to also kind of help with that issue of being kind of antisocial. And yes, I know it was also to do with like numbers, big numbers being too big and all that stuff too. But that doesn't serve my argument here. So we're just kind of forging on ahead.
That's
And this part of newer MMOs may also contribute to why players bounce off of them more than
he literally just said he's willfully choosing to cherry pick his data to prove his point.
they used to. Kind of because they can. The game requires less of you, so it gives less to you. The connection isn't as strong, for better or for worse.
I don't
And
agree.
with more players bouncing around, that antisocial problem continues to exacerbate. But
Again, I'm going to come back to this. 9 times out of 10, anybody who feels like everybody's being antisocial, I have found that 9 times out of 10, these are people who refuse to admit that they're the problem. And so they blame it all on everyone else. And it's like maybe if they were just a little more forgiving and a little more understanding and a little more accepting and a little more proactive in looking for other groups. He mentioned that he had social anxiety when he was younger. So this may be contributing to why he still feels like he's in that antisocial bubble, because it doesn't sound to me like he's ever gone out and tried to find a group or formed a group or use his Twitch stream to form a group and use his streamer privilege to find people to play with him. It sounds like he is willfully playing solo. And if you're willfully playing solo, that comes back to me saying earlier, it's a you problem, not a me problem. It's definitely not a game problem. It's not that the games are antisocial, it's that I think you might be antisocial. Because again, 9 times out of 10, most of the people who claim that games are antisocial or they claim that games are full of toxic players have really only ever had a couple of bad experiences, and they let that define what their total experience across all MMOs is, as opposed to realizing that, well, maybe just maybe there was a misunderstanding, maybe just maybe you actually did pull the mob, maybe just maybe it was you. Maybe just maybe it wasn't the other person. Maybe just maybe the misunderstanding that took place that caused the two of you to have an argument was because of you. And I think most people don't want to pick that, speck out of their own eye, and so they immediately blame everyone else. I have been wrong so many. I have absolutely pulled from people's camps in this, and always I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, guys. Didn't mean to do that. I have absolutely kill stealed by accident. I have absolutely ninja pulled by accident. I have absolutely accidentally pulled a train on people and they yelled at me. And then I was like, I'm so sorry. Didn't mean to do it. You talk it through. You realize that, oh, it's just a misunderstanding, and you move on about your day. People generally aren't antisocial. It's usually the people who are unwilling to admit that they were wrong that are the problem. Lithimia says, I was thinking along the lines of the WoW Classic crowd who all want Blizzard to go back and start making new content for WoW Classic with the design philosophy from 2004 to 2007, but none of them can agree on what philosophy that is beyond very vague statements like automated group tools suck. I totally agree. Bam says, my data shows that the sky is not blue, it's green, and the world is not flat, it's concaved.
gets worse. Because within these MMOs, there are also normally mechanics that contribute to separation by design. And while the exact look of these mechanics changes from MMO to MMO, the problem exists in them all. There can be hard barriers like in EverQuest, where a level 10 cannot group with a level 25, or in Elder Scrolls Online, despite its level agnostic features, with vertical gear progression as well as single player story progression. Haven't purchased the super awesome mega super awesome story pack that has both platinum and goldanium loot boxes in it? Well then get good, kid. It also
That's an over exaggeration. So most games have level scaling these days and some sort of phasing going on. World of Warcraft is a good example where they literally have the phasing button. Lord of the Rings Online doesn't have any requirements to group up with other people. You can have a 70 grouping with a level 1 and still complete quests. Only games that haven't updated their technology still have the issue that he's talking about in terms of players not being able to group up. Most games have made it extremely easy for people to group up with each other regardless of how long they've been playing the game. Like EverQuest 2 has the mentoring system. Like that's just yeah, it doesn't exist the way he says it does.
also shows up in softer barriers like game knowledge. Don't know how to execute your Daiko in the 2 seconds you have in EverQuest on the raid? Well, you're excluded. Don't understand the giant flaming ball of doom with a side of existential dread in Warcraft? Gone.
Okay, so there is a counter argument to what he's saying here, because I will defend until I'm blue in the face. I will defend raid guilds who have a required minimum knowledge of the game to compete at the like if you're wanting to complete in Mythic Plus content, then yes, you need to know your shit. If you're going into the looking for raid or looking for dungeon matchmaking system expecting people to wait on you and to cater to you and it's all about you because you're a selfish little twat, then you're going to have a bad experience because people are using the matchmaking system to speedrun content that they already know intimately. This is why I've been harping on what an amazing tool the follower dungeons are in World of Warcraft, and like the droid, the story droid that you could do in Star Wars: The Republic, the way you could do it in Final Fantasy 14, where you can go back and do content at your own pace, get the story, learn the layout of the dungeon, learn the mechanics, learn your rotation, get good, because you do need to get good if you're going to compete at mythical levels and you're going to compete at the raid scene. And if you're not willing to get good, again, that's a you problem, not a me problem, not a game problem. Because complaining that there are barriers of entry to do certain levels of content, that's just a fallacy, that right there, because there's always going to be a barrier of entry no matter what we're talking about. I always love to use the Olympic cyclist analogy here. So I like riding my bike in the park on a Saturday afternoon for a leisurely ride. Have a little, get a little medicated, drink a little wine, take my bike to the park, and have a nice afternoon park ride with my wife and a little picnic. Then there are people who want to go mountain bike riding for fitness, and they go every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Then there's the guys who are really heavy about their fitness and they do it for cardio every day, and they have a $3,000 bike and they ride every single day on the highway, pissing off the people who drive their cars on the highway. Then there are the amateur sportsman competitors who have more expensive bikes and they go even harder and do marathons and all these other things. Then there is the people who compete professionally in races around the world, and then there's the Olympic level athlete who is like the pinnacle of the peak. At no point in time should the player who is riding his bike in the park on a Saturday afternoon while he's high and drunk, he should never, ever, ever be able to simply do the same content that the Olympic athlete is doing just because he owns a bike. He needs to progress. There needs to be a barrier of entry. There needs to be a challenge to overcome, and that challenge is the social dynamic of working within a group of 30 to 40 players and finding your niche and not being a douche. And there's also the aspect of realizing that there is a barrier of entry, whether that's a social barrier of entry or a hard gear cap level of entry that everyone has to deal with. So, Bam, Berserker says, wait, does he want there to be a difference between veteran players and new players or not? He's sending conflicted messages. Yeah, the messaging here is very odd.
Haven't earned flight yet in Guild Wars 2? Catch up with us later.
Yeah, seriously, go do it.
MMOs are less about
Oh man, I just talked about this yesterday with the reason I don't do collabs. Like Asmongold was talking about, this is where people just want to they want to just ride your skirt tails and piggyback off of your hard work, and it's like, no, scrub, get good and then come back. Like, go put in your time and then you can collab with me. Like, if you haven't gotten if you haven't got your flying yet and you're expecting to come do the content that we're doing and we've been playing every day for 6 years and you're coming in with 2 weeks under your belt and you're expecting to do the same thing, get out of here. Like, you got to go put your time in. There needs to be that barrier of entry. That's why I'm a big fan of what they do with modern games, because you have all the single player RPG elements that you can do to get good, and then you have the multiple tiers of group-based stuff that you can go through to get even better until you can meet the barrier of entry to get into a raid guild.
Inclusion and more about exclusion. And to many, that's not a bug, it's a feature. It cannot be extracted from the DNA of an MMO because the MMO is shared. The MMO is designed in a way that encourages different levels of competition throughout its persistent world, even when we're not fully aware that we are competing. Why else would we all care so damn much to make sure that the game is balanced, that our class is balanced, that our leveling is balanced?
I've never cared about balance.
Everything is as balanced as it can possibly be. Why do we want the playing field to be so fair in an MMO? Because we're essentially always, in some way, either competing or comparing ourselves to other players in the game.
I'm not. Again, this is a you problem, not a me problem. We had a discussion the other day because our guild in Warcraft is about one thing: story. And the reason it's about story is because it takes, yes, Hembar, he's totally projecting. uh, we had someone very early on who was a little confused about our mission in Warcraft. Our mission is story, and they got really excited about, why aren't we going faster for the gear? And it's like, because for us the gear means nothing. The progression means nothing. We are not looking at what other players are doing. We are looking at what we are doing and what we're doing as a guild. Um, Lurthimer says the game should never equate new players to experience sweaties, but it should make it clear what the path to get to that level is and what the next step for the player is on the journey. I would argue that Warcraft does a good job of that with normal mode, heroic mode, mythical mode. Like, and in Star Wars: The Republic, it's story, veteran, master. Like, choose the tier that you want and understand that there is a tier structure and a progression structure there. Berserker says I only care for balance in PvP content. That's the only place you should worry about it. Yeah, we're anti min max. We are absolutely anti min max Himbara for sure.
Whether we are working together towards a common goal and think that we should be contributing more with our class or less, or this person shouldn't, or if we're just thinking, hey, I really don't like the way this is going with class balance and everyone is shifting over here, but I want to play here. Leveling speeds, gear, achievements, knowledge, zone access. There are myriads of ways MMOs do this, but it all comes down to one thing: barriers, and somewhat necessary barriers. It's a key part of the RPG DNA of progression, and it's why people play MMOs in the first place and why so few of them lean toward more horizontal progression. People like to progress, and in the shared world they want
I will
it
agree
to
with
be
him on that.
balanced progression, because competition, racing.
Competition only exists in PvP. If you're competing in PvE, that's a you problem, not a me problem. There is no competition in PvE unless you want there to be. The only competition that exists in PvE is server firsts. And that only matters to a very small, and I mean small, single percentile population of a given game. The amount of people who play the game who give no shits whatsoever about that world first status, that's like 99% of your player base. So the idea that everybody wants that is just not, that's a fallacy. It's a 1 percentile, it's very small, the people who play with that mentality.
Fighting against each other in PvP, basically.
PvP, yes, but that's a
any
little
kind
different.
of some form of competition in some way. Think about, take this thought experiment here. Think about how often either you or someone you know who plays an MMO has said something along the lines of, yeah, well, when I got to max level, it was harder. How many fans of EverQuest have, for example, brought up hell levels and how they had to level that way, or how on progression servers things are easier than they were when they played? Think about how people talk about WoW Classic as being the difficult WoW compared to current WoW, which is too easy.
I've never said it's too easy. I love it.
Push and pull of trying to compare our achievements within it.
Somebody asked me earlier today during the stream. We were literally streaming Warcraft before this, and somebody asked me, or he came on and commented about how he prefers Classic, and I was like, I don't. I played Classic when it came out a few years ago, and I went through that, Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King. I had fun, but I do not prefer that leveling speed to retail World of Warcraft. I do not prefer the lack of matchmaking. I want a matchmaking system. I want fast leveling. I want dragonflight. I want mounts. I want cosmetics. I want looking for dungeon. I want looking for raid. I want all of the modern amenities in my MMORPG. I want cinematic cutscenes and voiceovers, and I want good, narration and all of these things. I don't want the old crunchy, moldy stuff.
An MMO, even if they might technically be the same achievement. But compare that to other social games that don't bear the massively title. A first-person shooter with multiplayer that actually has a matchmaking system that tries to put you directly with people on the same point of their journey as you. A survival
Destiny
co-op
2.
game that shrinks the server size down to 50, 25, or even 10 players, but may provide a similar but truncated path that an MMO provides. In this style of game, it's less like an endless marathon through New York with hundreds or thousands of runners, and more like a high school track with 10 runners who probably all know each other. The journey is shorter, and thus the barriers are less egregious. The competition may still exist, and often does as a primary driver of engagement with games like this, but in smaller bites. The comparison will always be there. Well, this was harder before the nerf. That's not what I'm talking about. More about the fact that it's kind of shrunk down. So it makes it a little bit easier to be social. And before you get mad in the comments, I'm not saying that these games are inherently more social than an MMO, just saying that it kind of highlights the difficulty in trying to make a game social that has this many types of barriers. And
let's see. Lurthermus says over the last few years in WoW, the race to world first for the mythic level raid boss kills has popped off a few in terms of live stream viewership. Absolutely. They had over 300,000 viewers during the last few pulls, and the final boss between the two top guilds competing for the kill. But in terms of how many people impacts directly, it's in the literal dozens. Correct. There's a viewership for it, but the amount of people actually doing it is completely different.
And when they do have barriers, they're a bit more permeable. They don't require the same kind of investment, so they don't need you to be online all the time. In fact, they actually rely on those third-party tools like Discord to actually have that socialization. They aren't social in game because they don't really have to be. It's not a core function despite what you might hear in a Call of Duty lobby. MMOs used to be where you would go to find the friends. It's where I went to go to find friends because I was an awkward as hell kid that had no idea how to socialize. I still don't yet in a lot of ways, but I got a little bit better. But I found myself through the text and anonymity of grouping up with Sephiroth SSJ4 and Drist, definitely not Doerden 23 on EverQuest in the early 2000s.
Why doesn't he play games like that? Ask Berserker. That's a good question. Hembar says, yeah, the newest Halo. Yeah, Halo Infinite.
But now I can find
great game,
those
by the
same
way.
people in, say, a Co-Carnage Discord or a Twitch.
Hembar said, I was just thinking I used to talk a lot in Halo online, but do less now, but that's on me, though. Yeah, I also think Halo Infinite's a great game, and Destiny 2 is a great game. I've had great experiences in both of those games. I love both those games. I think they're great games, multiplayers. I like the multiplayer more in Destiny 2 though because it's less about the PvP matching and it's more the co-op experience. When they added the co-op for Halo Infinite, it became a much funner game to me. As much fun as I had in the solo gameplay in Halo Infinite, I can't wait for my brother to actually have the time to play Halo Infinite with me because I'm gonna go through the co-op experience with him and just have a blast. It's such a good storyline. I can't wait for the next Halo game.
Stream chat. The tools we have to find and connect with people of similar interests online have grown exponentially since the time when MMOs were the premier source of being social with purpose. You aren't finding friends in MMOs anymore. You're bringing friends to the MMOs. Now, of course, there are always going to be outliers to this. There are groups of players who play MMOs with the purpose of finding friends, and it can work, especially in MMOs that allow for it with extensive use of guilds and providing benefits to cooperative play. Those can still assist, but it's not even remotely like what it used to be because it doesn't have to be. Because we are no longer so starved for the means to connect that we use ICQ and AIM or a friends list in EverQuest or World of Warcraft just to meet up with people. So that's where we end up, all from a little comment from a British streamer who really likes RuneScape and was critical of Neverwinter once. The decline in the social merits of MMOs is largely tied to the increase in the abilities and the ways that we can socialize online outside of MMOs.
And also the fact that we all have Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Kindle readers, social media, YouTube, Twitch. We're watching other people play games on streams. We're doing all of these 5 million other things that we never used to have access to because they didn't exist back then.
They no longer serve that purpose of chat room necessarily. You can still get together, you can still be social in games. It's just not the same as it once was, because there are too many other avenues.
Berserker saws. I can't believe I called it.
Ways much easier to connect. And this has merged in together with the continued push in MMOs towards basically task lists to complete while in game, taking you away from what you would be doing together and setting you at different stages on different parts of the game.
There is some truth to this, but however, I would also argue that those lists always existed whether you wanted them to or not, because even before they started adding quest journals to games, you would come into a party, And you would be like, "Hey guys, we're gonna go do Carnor's Castle tonight in EverQuest, right? Does anybody need anything from there?" And this person would be like, "Well, I need these scales. Oh, I need these tongues. I need these teeth. I need these swords." Everybody had different needs. It just wasn't portrayed in a questional layout. It was a personal thing. It was like, "Well, I need these for crafting. I'm here for this quest. I'm here for this quest." Everybody still had those individual needs in old school MMOs. They just weren't portrayed in a graphical layout with a to-do list. But the thing he's talking about here still existed even before. It just wasn't laid out in a UI format.
You're still meeting the objectives, you're just doing it in a bit of a different way. An MMO has never cared how you spend time in its game. I'm sorry to say that I do not believe that early devs of Variant Interactive and Blizzard were thinking about you making a lifelong friend in their game first and foremost. They were thinking of how to keep you engaged in the game, and one of the cheapest and easiest ways to do that is through user-generated content, of which socializing is one avenue. But now MMOs have new ways to keep you engaged. This can be accomplished through task completion and access, keeping you in-game longer by providing little breadcrumbs of dopamine for achievements, upgrades, levels, quest completions, etc.
Those have existed since the very day MMORPGs started, so you can't claim like this is some sort of thing that just started now. Like these tasks have the very first thing you would do in EverQuest is go collect bone chips or go collect, wolf hides and wolf teeth or bear steaks. Like tasks have always existed in MMOs. It is a myth that these people like to create when they claim that tasks never used to exist, that we never used to have to do dailies. Yes, you did. You just didn't have a quest journal telling you what to do. You had it written down in your notebook. You're like, oh yeah, that's right. The guild leader wants me to get these 5 swords to turn them in for a breastplate. Totally still existed even then.
The era of the daily login bonus and daily quests means MMOs still keep you on the treadmill. It's just no longer the same treadmill where you talk
Yes, it
with your
is.
friends while you're on it side by side.
That's so not true. You still talk to your friends side by side. Join a fucking Discord group. Like, what is the problem here? I am legitimately do not understand his complaint here, because all the socialization he says he wants and craves, he can get in a Discord server with other people doing voice chat. And I do it. I'm gonna this is I'm triggered right now. I'm triggered a little bit. Guys, we just did a World of Warcraft stream. Hang on, I just yanked my cable because I've got a little animated with my hands. We just did this Wednesday night. We went and did a bunch of groups with the guild. We just did it Saturday night. We went and did a raid, and we've got all these. We do kind of limit the the voice chat when we're doing raids so that only the officers are talking. But prior to that, we're in the lobby. After that, we're in the lobby. We're doing dungeons on Saturday mornings, groups on Saturday mornings, groups on Wednesday nights. Like our guild is as communicative, and our Discord for the guild is constantly popping off because people are dropping screenshots looking for group suggestions. They need help with the quest, people filling out an application looking for an invite, people wanting to go do this, people needing crafting mats, like people want to do transmog runs, people want to go do battleground runs. Like yeah, Himbar's like Renfail's moving a lot, which means he's triggered. Well, also I'm on a different headset. I haven't told anybody this yet, but Lucas chewed up. I just spent $150 on that new headset in November, and Lucas already chewed it up again. We had an accident that happened the other day, and Chris and I had to run out, so I use it. And I'm currently using Christina's backup while I have another one on order, and it has these two things that hang under my face, and it's like it's a short thing, and I keep getting caught on the cord when I do movements. Bam says he probably still uses Ventrilo chat instead of Discord. I feel like that might be the case. I'm feeling like he just doesn't like Discord.
Now you do it by sending them a Discord message while they're on an exercise bike.
Who cares?
We're
Who
now to be
cares?
social in 2023, and
Who gives a shit? If you send your buddy a message and say, "Hey man, I'm about to jump on to play my night elf. You want to come hang out with me?" and they answer, "Yeah, give me 5 minutes," you've still accomplished the same objective. You have gotten a friend to come play with you. Like, who cares if it happened in Discord or in the game? It doesn't matter if that person comes and plays with you, or if you get the guild group to come do something on a Tuesday night. The key is having a place to be social, and being upset because it migrated out of game into a different place is just really ridiculous. Like,
And beyond it
especially when Discord has an overlay. Like, it can be in game if you want it to be.
really comes down to the same thing it does in other games now. Bring friends and want to socialize. The onus is now on you
Yes,
to make the game
it's
social,
always been on
to
you.
make it not lonely. And as we've seen, a lot of players just don't care. They're fine with being isolated and alone in the game.
No, that's not true. I group up with people all the time when I want to. But I would also argue, why should I give a shit about other players who are not part of my social structure? Like, if the idea of, the randos and the pugs, right? Like, there is a time and place for random groups with pugs. Totally accept that. But I prefer not to. And maybe this is my streamer privilege showing, but I always have people to group with, and I will always find people to group with, because I am also a very sociable person who has done this in the past. Even when I wasn't running guilds, I go to Reddit, I go to the forums, and I have always found people to group with within a week or two of playing any given game. The onus is on the player. And it's like, if you're not making groups happen, that's a you problem, not a game problem.
Because they're still getting a lot of that achievement and that bonus of like the dopamine as they continue.
Himbar says it's weird to act like you care when your
theory.
actions so you don't. Maybe he just wants hits.
Theory. I don't know. I was trying to do a thing there. But who am I? I'm just a YouTuber who talks about MMOs and RPGs that you watch occasionally. I want to hear from you. Do you think that MMOs are lonely?
Nope.
Do you think the advent of new ways to socialize, new ways to connect with people all around the world have essentially made the social things that made MMOs so important to that back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, kind of obsolete?
Nope.
Do you feel like you have to bring your friends to the MMO instead of finding your friends in it?
That has always been the case. Like, it was literally, you find people who are cool and you then schedule your groups and you get together with them on set. That's the way I've always played that way. I've always played, hey guys, I'm going to be playing on Friday nights. Who wants to join me? And I go find people to play with me. I've never just sat there and been like, I'm going to wait for the people to find me and come group with me. Hi guys, I'm lonely. Will you please come group with me? Please group with me. I'm lonely, everybody. Please group with me. Can someone please group with me? No, I'm like, hey guys, looking for 3 more for Orc Hill. 3 more for Orc Hill. We've got a tank and a healer, 1 DPS. Need 2 more for Orc Hill. Anybody got an enchanter? We could use a crowd control. Anybody? OOC. Shout. Group channel 1, and then matchmaking. And now matchmaking is a thing from Mana from Heaven, because, what?
My name is Redbeard Flynn. Thank you so much for watching, and a special thank you to the members here on YouTube, the people over on Patreon, people subscribing over on Twitch. I really appreciate you all, and you are helping me get closer and closer to the dream of being able to do this full time. And I cannot say how, like, it means so much to me, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Redbeard's got some good stuff that I've watched in the past, but I am 100% not in the same camp with him on this topic at all. You can blame this video on Kel, because Kel was the one who sent this to me over the holidays and wanted me to react to it. So this was my reaction to this. I got nothing but respect for Redbeard Flynn here. Like I said, I like some of his content, but I'm just gonna completely agree to disagree with him on this topic in entirety, because everything he complains about is just, it sounds to me like one of the people who just wants to be stuck 25 years ago, and who just thinks like the best years of MMORPGs was like back then, and like that's why P99 needs to exist, and that's why we got to give money to the Pantheon people, because they're the only ones, they're going to be the savers of the MMO industry with this old school forced grouping, corpse runs, slow leveling, no matchmaking, social game. And I feel like all of these people are antisocial neckbeards who are they're usually the toxic people in the group, because they just don't want to get along with anybody. Because I don't have a problem finding people to play MMORPGs with. I don't have a problem. I've never had a problem. Himbar, you've been here since, I don't know if you're still in chat. Liam's been around in my community since I think 2014. So 10 years now. and I think he can speak to this. I have never once had an issue finding people to play MMORPGs with. That I've been in Discord and elsewhere constant like, hey guys, we're gonna go play EverQuest for 3 months. Who wants to come? Hey guys, we're doing EverQuest 2. Who wants to come? Hey guys, we're doing this game, that game, Star Wars: The Republic, Lord of the Rings Online. We're doing World of Warcraft Classic, this, that, the other. We always get 50, 70, as many as 150 players to come play with us. Hinvar just said it's true, just to say it's a even small games. Yeah, we did Shroud of the Avatar. We even did Shroud of the Avatar with like 6 or 8 people at one point in the time. At one point in time, and I know we did Valheim at one point with like 5 people. Um, I have never once had an issue with finding people to play games with, ever. Ever. And we're talking all the way back. But again, I was the person who 25 years ago was putting my actual picture up in the forums and saying, "Hey guys, I'm Tim in real life. You can call me Renfail. I'd love to meet up with people. These are the times I play. Let's rock." And I was never afraid to be out there because I've always been somewhat of a outgoing person socially as opposed to suffering from social anxiety. So that does absolutely play into it. But I think you have to accept that if you're someone who suffers from antisocial behavior patterns, then you probably need to recognize that it's not the game that's the problem, but probably you. And I don't know that this is necessarily the case, but he does mention in the video multiple times that he still has problems with the antisocial mentality and has suffered from social anxiety, and that contributes to a lot of things. And I think that because I identified, we all identified multiple times through the video when he was saying, well, what about this? And we were all like, just ask people, just go to Discord, go to Reddit, go to the forums. Like, he kept talking about how he couldn't find people, and we're all in chat going, but you could have done these 10 things to find other people. Why didn't you do those things? Um, it's very interesting. There is a greater conversation to be had too, and I think we'll do this at another point in time. And I got to go find the video, but when we talk about how a lot of times when I've gone back and played like EverQuest on a progression server or EverQuest 2, some of these older games on their progression servers, you deal with we always come in with preformed groups because again, my socialization happens in Discord and on social media and Reddit, and we bring people in and we get 50 people together and we go forth and we play a game together. That's just how we've always done it. Um, and I've just always been very good at leading groups of people. It's a natural talent. Um, so me being the opposite side of the equation from Redbeard here in the sense that I don't have a problem finding people to get groups with because I'm outgoing and social and I'm always communicating with people. I have always found games to be social. I've always found people to play games with it, whether it's 25 years ago or today. I think it just depends on, there's that saying in life, you get out what you put in, and that's really what it comes down to. You do get out what you put into when it comes to if you want it. If you want a game to be social, it can be, but you have to be willing to put yourself out there. And if you got to be the catalyst for the group, then you've got to be the catalyst. Um, and to be blunt, I mean, not to be rude, but also to there's this saying that, like if you refuse to do something about the problem, then you're part of the problem. This kind of feels like that's going on here. I don't know if that's actually the case. This is not meant as a personal attack. It's just sort of a judgment call that I'm making based on this video, as opposed, I don't know him personally. I don't, um, but I think we've proven that all of the things in this video are just not really true if you don't want them to be. You can go, um, yeah, Berserker. I think 4 or 5 people mentioned that this just felt like him projecting throughout the video. I think that's a fair critical analysis. Um, I know this video's got good views, and there's probably a lot of commentary that people could go through. It's got about it's up to 47,000, so he's had some good traffic on it, and there's a lot of. Um, but I mean, even like here's one of these comments: it says Asheron's call is an exception to your argument. High-level players with more resources had more incentive to group with low people. Um, there's I would say if I'm just scanning through here. Um, See, here's somebody claiming that instance dungeons and fast leveling killed the MMO. That's someone who's so out of touch with modern MMOing that you just can't take them seriously because that's just not true. It's just not true. The reason millions of people play EverQuest, excuse me, not, let me rephrase that. The reason millions of people play World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy 14, and yet only 25,000 to 30,000 people play EverQuest 1, and only 1,200 people play P99. The reason is because people actually do want instanced content and single player RPG storylines and things that are fast rewards, and they want matchmaking systems, and they want all of these things that modernize the games. It's really hard to take anyone seriously when they claim that instancing ruined MMOs, when the MMOs that have millions and millions and millions and millions and tens of millions of players have instancing, and the games that don't like to use instancing because they're too old school suffer from having less than 50,000 players. Um, it's interesting. So it was a fun topic. I'll probably get roasted for this by some people, but I'm okay with that. That's part of having a good conversation, is being willing to accept that people are going to be as critical of me as I was of Flynn. And again, nothing against Flynn. I like a lot of his content. I don't agree with him on this particular video. I wish him nothing but love and the best and continued growth on his YouTube channel. But yeah, that video is. um, yeah, don't agree at all. I don't think that MMOs have a problem with being antisocial. I think they're great fun. So